Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Canada Truth Channel, where Canada, the illusion of freedom and system of control is exposed. So, a lot of backlash from the recent election and the installation of Mark Carney. There is, of course, a lot of misinformation, disinformation, propaganda, mostly coming from the federal government and their propaganda ministry. For example, CBC, Danielle Smith's reform is nudging Alberta separation vote. If toward when? The Globe and Mail, Indigenous groups call on Carney to rein in Alberta Premier over separation comments. Wow. So I realized emotions are running really high. Unfortunately, what a lot of people out there don't know is they've fallen for a psychological operation, a propaganda campaign of fear to manipulate your emotions based on fear of tariffs from the United States and Donald Trump annexing Canada. You have been deceived. And unfortunately, with a very quick Google search, Brookfield assets deal with Kushner, you could have come up with a whole bunch of articles. And including the Brookfield website. Brookfield acquires 100% leasehold interest in 666 Fifth Avenue's office condominium. For those of you that did not know, Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law, owned that tower and made this deal with Mark Carney's Brookfield. So I'm sorry, but you've been deceived. And we're in a psychological war right now, and it's increasing. And the propaganda and the fear campaign is going to be out of control. There's all these articles and all this information. And right off the bat, I'd like to address this. This is going to be a bitter pill for some people to swallow. I had nothing to do with any of this. These are not my treaties. These are not my laws. I'm simply showing you what they say so that you are armed with the truth and information to protect yourselves from being manipulated through psychological operations designed to manufacture your consent. Okay, so two Alberta First Nation chiefs sent cease and desist letter to Premier Smith over separatist talk. Let's have a look at the letter. Dear Premier Smith, you are attempting to manufacture a national unity crisis by enabling a referendum on separatism and a fanatical cell of individuals at the exact moment when Canadians need to unite against Donald Trump's America. The province of Alberta is on treaty lands. Please be advised that your irresponsible statements and actions are in breach of treaties number 6, 7, and 8. We demand that you immediately stand down from this conduct. Our treaties are sacred covenants and are to last forever. Alberta did not exist when our ancestors agreed to share the land with the Crown. The province has no authority to supersede or interfere with our treaties, even indirectly by passing the buck to a citizen referendum. If you or any Canadians are not happy living on treaty lands, they are free to apply for citizenship elsewhere. A very strongly worded and passionate letter. Now, I'm not going to speculate on what these chiefs know or don't know or their motives behind this letter. What I am going to do is review Treaty 6, 7, and 8, which are referenced in this cease and desist letter with, I'm also wondering under what authority they're sending this letter. Okay. Here we have Treaty number 6. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, not my words. I had nothing to do with these treaties, nor did you. I'm just showing you what they say. The Plain and Wood Cree tribes of Indians and all other Indians inhabiting the district hereinafter described and defined do hereby cede, release, surrender, and yield up to the government of the Dominion of Canada for Her Majesty the Queen and her successors forever all their rights, titles, and privileges whatsoever to the lands included within the following limits. It goes on to describe the boundaries of this treaty, and then it continues. And also all their rights, titles, and privileges whatsoever to all other lands whenever situated in the Northwest Territories or in the other province or portion of Her Majesty's dominions situated and being within the Dominion of Canada. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Treaty number 6 in very clear language. Let's have a look at Treaty number 7. Here's Treaty number 7. And the language is very much the same. And whereas the said commissioners have proceeded to negotiate a treaty with the said Indians, and the same has been finally agreed upon and conducted as follows. That is to say, the Blackfeet, Blood, Pagan, Sarcee, Stoney, and other Indians inhabiting the district hereinafter, more fully described and defined, do hereby cede, release, surrender, and yield up to the government of Canada for Her Majesty the Queen and her successors forever all their rights, titles, and privileges whatsoever to the lands included the following limits. That is to say, and it goes on to describe the aforementioned land, and then it goes on to say, and also all their rights, titles, and privileges whatsoever to all other lands wherever situated in the Northwest Territories or in any other portion of the Dominion of Canada. Let's look at Treaty number 8. And whereas the said commissioners have proceeded to negotiate a treaty with the Cree, Beaver, Chippewan, and other Indians inhabiting the district hereinafter defined and described, and the same has been agreed upon and concluded by the respective bands at the dates mentioned hereunder, the said Indians do hereby cede, release, surrender, and yield up to the government of the Dominion of Canada for Her Majesty the Queen and her successors forever all of their rights, titles, and privileges whatsoever to the lands included within following limits, that is to say. And also the said Indian rights, titles, and privileges whatsoever to all other lands wherever situated in the Northwest Territories, British Columbia, or in any other portion of the Dominion of Canada. To have and to hold the same to Her Majesty the Queen and her successors forever. So, the language is pretty clear. This letter is verging on libel as far as I'm concerned. It's very dangerous. Once again, do I think the treaties are fair? No, I don't. I had nothing to do with those treaties, nor did any of you, nor did any of the chiefs writing these letters. Their ancestors did. And I don't know if the chiefs are unaware what's written in the treaties, or if they're just trying to play on your emotions or have any other motivation. I do not know. What I do know is in 2025, despite the last 10 years of Justin Trudeau spewing his propaganda about supporting the Native people of Canada, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to all the Indigenous groups for what the government of Canada did to you. They've done a lot of horrible things to a lot of horrible people. But in 2025, the Canadian federal government respects First Nations people so much that the legislation regarding the management and treaties and therefore is still called the Indian Act, ladies and gentlemen. Believe it or not, in 2025, it's still legally called the Indian Act. How absolutely disgusting is that? And why have the chiefs not spoken up and said, hey, if you respect us so much and you're there for us, can you change that obnoxious name of the legislation that governs us? But it is what it is. Now, let's look at definition. Designated lands means a tract of land or any interest therein, the legal title to which remains vested in Her Majesty and in which the band for those whose use and benefit it was set apart as a reserve has otherwise than absolutely released or surrendered its rights or interests, whether before or after coming into force of this definition. And probably the most disgusting, the legal definition of First Nation people in Canada is an Indian. It means a person who, pursuant to this act, is registered as an Indian or is entitled to be registered as an Indian. So, all of you First Nations people out there, that's the federal government that you are supporting and have been supporting. And at the very least, there will be negotiations. All of these issues will be worked out. Moving right along. All of this nonsense, misinformation and disinformation that Alberta can't secede from the Dominion of Canada, which is absolute nonsense. The Supreme Court of Canada has already ruled on Quebec. It's established case law. There is also legislation in the Clarity Act regarding secession. So rather than hear a bunch of nonsense, let's actually see what the Supreme Court said. Quebec could not, despite a clear referendum result, purport to invoke a right of self-determination to dictate the terms of a proposed succession to the other parties to the Federation. Of course not. It's a negotiation. The democratic vote by, however, a strong majority would have no legal effect on its own and could not push aside the principles of federalism and the rule of law, the rights of individuals and minorities, or the operation of democracy in the other provinces or in Canada as a whole. Of course not. It's a negotiation. Democratic rights under the Constitution cannot be divorced from constitutional obligations, nor, however, can the reverse proposition be accepted. The continued existence and operation of the Canadian constitutional order could not be indifferent to a clear expression of a clear majority of Quebecers that they no longer wish to remain in Canada. The other provinces and the federal government would have no basis to deny the right of the government of Quebec to pursue secession should a clear majority of the people of Quebec choose that goal, so long as in doing so, Quebec respects the rights of others. The negotiation that followed such a vote would address the potential act of secession as well as its possible terms should in fact secession proceed. There would be no conclusions predetermined by law on any issue. Negotiations would need to address the interests of the other provinces, the federal government, and Quebec, and indeed the rights of all Canadians, both within and outside Quebec, and specifically the rights of minorities. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. And in the Constitution Act 1867, formerly known as the British North America Act 1867, the exclusive powers of the provincial legislatures are set out, including non-renewable natural resources, forestry resources, electrical energy, and I encourage all of you to read the Constitution so at least you know what you're talking about. Those familiar with my channel will already know my opinion, and if through these negotiations the federal government tries to play dirty, here are the provisions of the Clarity Act. I'm not going to go through it with you, but as you can see, the law is already in place for secession. Now, if the federal government and the other provinces want to play games, Alberta will be prepared. And those of you familiar with my channel know that I have shown you the enacting clause of the Constitution Act, the foundational document where our federal government claims to gain their authority of and over Canadians and Canada, that was repealed in 1893 by the Statute Law Revision Act, as well as Section 2. So I've gone over that with you before, but if the feds want to play hardball, elbows up, we'll go elbows up, because their government is de facto, period. They cannot show lawful authority. And if pushed, the people of Alberta are going to show that to the entire world, which I've been trying to do for about 15 years now. Anyways, sorry if I'm getting passionate, but I've dedicated a lot of years of my life to this for the truth and for the Alberta and Canada that we were all taught to believe in. Okay, so the provisions are already written. And like I said, if they want to play hardball, even myself, I believe that I have case law that's never ever been brought up because no one dares. Well, you've been poking the people of Alberta long enough. And stuff like this is going to come out. Rest assured. And your propaganda campaigns can say all they want. You can take down all these websites all you want. Do you think that the people that know your deliberate deception and fraud don't have all of this information? Anyhow, why in 1931 Canada chose not to exercise its full autonomy as provided for under the Statute of Westminster? This is misinformation right off the bat, because it was the provinces. The autonomy was granted to the provinces. And like I said, ladies and gentlemen, elbows up. This is an information war, and Alberta has the truth on our side. I've just shown you. And for those detractors out there, you can smear me, you can smear Danielle Smith. You know what? The people of Alberta will be prepared. We will not let you bring down Danielle Smith. We will continue to support her. She is not the separatist premier. She has allowed democracy to prevail in Alberta. That's all. So all of you people out there that democracy, Trump's a threat to democracy, now it's going to be Danielle Smith. Danielle Smith is the greatest threat to Canada. It's no longer going to be Donald Trump. Him and Mark Carney are pals. It's going to be Danielle Smith and the people of Alberta. So I'm going to do my best to arm you all with the information you need to make the most important decision in the history of Alberta. Please, if you find this information beneficial and useful or entertaining, please share, like the videos, subscribe to the channel. This channel is severely censored by Google and by YouTube. So please help us get this information out there, and let's go, Alberta. We will be successful. Once we achieve our independence, we can have another referendum. Do we want to join and become the 51st state, or do we want to remain a separate sovereign nation? That's another video. That's another discussion. First, we have to exercise our full autonomy as provided for under the Statute of Westminster. And as the initial question, I would propose, should Alberta choose to exercise the full autonomy as provided for under the Statute of Westminster? I think that is a very straightforward question, and we can provide all of the information regarding the Statute of Westminster, what it did, the history of it, and people can then make very informed decisions. Most people in Canada have never even heard of the Statute of Westminster, probably the most important document in our history, because everything else is fraud. So please like, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned for more information. I'm working on some other things, so hang in there. Hang in there, people. Don't get distracted by their propaganda. Don't fall for their misinformation and disinformation. There's a lot of us out there that are trying to show you the truth. So please support those other folks out there as well. And let's go, Alberta.